Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tackle Your Biggest Event Challenges in 2023. My name is Camille Whitestern. I lead experiential marketing here at Splash, and I'll be your host for today's virtual roundtable, which I am very much excited to begin shortly. Today, we're here to explore actionable tips, strategies, and tactics to help you do more with less this year, because let's face it, navigating uncertain times is certainly not a new concept for any of us, and 2023 is shaping up to be more of the same, presenting new and evolving hurdles for event marketers to overcome. And just naming the elephant in the room, I'm talking about a strained economic environment, reduced or limited budgets and headcount, rising travel and event costs, and attendees who are more selective with their time than ever. And these are just some of the obstacles that we'll need to solve for in the year ahead. And honestly, the list goes on. But for today's discussion, we're going to focus on addressing the top 3 challenges each of you shared with us while registering. So if you didn't know, you, along with hundreds of other marketers who registered, told us the top 3 things that are keeping you up at night are how to make the most of your budget, how to achieve alignment between marketing and sales, and how to improve event attendance rates and really get your target attendees to actually show up to your events. So luckily for all of us tuned in, our panel of experts today are each seasoned marketing and events leaders with deep knowledge and experience in working successfully with sales and revenue leaders. So I really want to encourage each of you to ask questions throughout our discussion. And the goal is to share as many insights as possible in the next hour. Okay, really quick, if you've attended a Splash webinar or workshop, you know what I'm about to do. We've got to run through just a few quick housekeeping items before diving in, especially because I know we have some first timers in the audience, so welcome. And first off, the entire end-to-end attendee journey for today's event is completely powered by Splash. So this means the registration page that you RSVP'd on, all of the pre-event reminder emails you received, and this virtual experience in Splash Studio right now are all a part of Splash's all-in-one event marketing platform. And once the live event concludes, we'll also host this event on demand, powered by Splash too. And whether or not you join us live, you will get the access to this on-demand recording and just use that same link that you used to join today. Okay, now I definitely saw a bunch of people share in the registration form that maintaining brand consistency across all of the various attendee touch points like email invites, social promo, registration pages, reminders, follow-ups, I could go on. Keeping all of those touch points on brand is a challenge. So if you can relate and you're wondering how we've done it for this event, consider this just a tiny peek behind the scenes. And sidebar, if you are curious to learn more about the Splash platform, I highly recommend joining our upcoming Meet Splash event to get the skinny on everything you can do with Splash, or vote on the poll that we have launched to let us know you'd like to learn more, and we'll be in touch. Okay, let's just quickly make sure we're familiar with our interactive tools for today. You can see on the right-hand side, we've got our chat, Q&A. We've got some polls launched. You will see some more polls sprinkled throughout our agenda today, so be on the lookout for those. If you have any questions during the discussion related to what we cover, please feel free to submit them through that Q&A tab. And other attendees can actually upvote questions that they're interested in hearing the answer to as well, which is pretty cool. And another great way to share your questions is through our event chat. You'll see we've got a pinned message in there for you. We'll be dropping and pinning other messages throughout the day, so just help us keep the chat on fire. Let's kick it off with a quick and easy prompt. Don't judge me for being basic, okay? But it's true that the start of a calendar year is such a helpful time to set goals and align our attentions to our goals. And one of the things I love most about this community is the way that we support each other and show up for each other. So first chat prompt of the day. What intentions have you set for 2023? Could be personal, professional, drop in a word, a short sentence, share with everyone. I'll go first. Mine is to make sure I'm putting on my own oxygen mask first, which, yes, that's easier said than done, but I am committed to progress over perfection, right? Okay, would love to see some other intentions that you have. Andrea said, be brave. Yes. Steph said her intention is to get 1% better every day. I absolutely love that. Kashana said, leaning into equity and transformational education. Heck yes. Someone else said, read one book a month and start Pilates. Oh, I just started a Pilates challenge. I'm with you there. Be intentional with everything I do. This is awesome. So awesome. Okay, but how awesome would it be if we actually supported each other in carrying out our intentions and hitting our goals? Here's the thing. We have an amazing community of events and marketing rock stars, and you never know who might be able to lend you the exact kind of support, camaraderie, inspo you're looking for. And seriously, there's incredible talent in our community. So if you haven't already, do yourself a favor, join us, join our community right now, and let's commit to showing up for each other and supporting each other in our goals. I know this is a lot to ask, but this is how community works at its best, right? When everyone makes deposits into the community, the withdrawals that we all make are so much richer. So whether you're looking for your next gig or your next hire, or resources and tips on strategy, or deeper connections with peers in your industry, or simply just need some feedback on a question or idea, join us. Come, ask your questions, share your perspective, and help us create the kind of community we all need and deserve, because we are so much stronger when we come together. Okay, just one final housekeeping item, I promise, and then we're gonna get into our discussion. And it's really more of an announcement. Our regulars in the audience know exactly what's coming. Yes, that's right, it's a social raffle. So what could you win? Well, we figured in light of everything going on, the most value we could add is through an event strategy session with Splash. So that is what you stand to win today. Here's how you can enter to win. We're going to drop a link to a LinkedIn post in the event chat right now. All you have to do is like and comment on that post, and you'll be entered in to win that strategy session with us. And we will announce the winner at the end of today's event, so stick around to the end. All right, I'm done gabbing about housekeeping items. Let's get into why we're really here today, which is to talk through solutions to our biggest challenges this year. Let's go ahead and meet our fellow roundtable panelists. Today, I am joined by Steph Pennell from Zoom Info, Marissa Maguire from Infilion, and Splash's very own CMO, Kate Hammitt. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves momentarily and share a super brief overview of either the types of programs that they're running and a little bit about their background, just so we have some context for today's discussion. So welcome, Stephanie, Marissa, and Kate, and thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to get right to it. Stephanie, let's start with you, then Marissa, then Kate. Introduce yourself for the audience and just paint a little bit picture of either the types of events that you're running or have run in the past, maybe what you're trying to accomplish through your events, or just a quick background to give some context for our listeners today. Steph,
awesome. Thank you so
welcome.
much for having me. Yeah, your energy is great. I'm in Boston. It's a little dreary today, so you're helping me wake up, especially in that afternoon lull. You know, the tea's not quite doing it. So my name is Steph Pennell. I work at Zoom Info as the Director of Event Marketing. Marketing for me, I was a bartender in college. I love hearing how other event marketers get into event marketing. I was a bartender in college, and I was like, I want to do something that's fun and lively and still gives you that high of, like, you know, working in a very fast-paced environment. And so I was like, marketing, that makes sense. And it wasn't until I worked at an experiential marketing agency that I really got into the events side and that really creative piece of it all, which I think is one of the reasons I love event marketing. And that's how I got here. I've tried to leave event marketing 3 times, and I'm back again in more operational roles, chief of staff type roles. So here we are. And the events that we are focusing on this year, a lot around thought leadership, a lot of CXO, very tailored, small, intimate events. And then for the trade shows, we're taking on more of, I guess you could call it an experiential approach in how we show up to those events, which I think we're going to kind of talk about. So I'll leave that for the discussion. But thank you for having me, and glad you could all join us.
Love that overview. Thank you so much. Always helpful to hear what other people are doing. And we have another former bartender in the audience as well. So you're in good company. Thanks so much, Steph. Marissa, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm Marissa Maguire. It's funny. Maybe that's how all event marketers start. I was also a bartender in college, so I don't know what it is about us, but that's very funny. I am the VP of Experiential Marketing at Infileon, which is an advertising technology company that focuses on a more personal and engaging approach to the customer journey through advertising, media, marketing. I focus on B2B marketing specifically. I've worked in ad tech for about 8 or 9 years now, focusing on client and also internal events. I've leveraged Splash the entire time. I love this community so much, and it's been so near and dear to me. So I'm really excited to be here. So thanks again for including me in the discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here and for just always being a Splash champion. It's great to have your thoughts and perspectives that you'll be sharing with us later today. Last but certainly not least, Kate, thank you for being here today as well.
What a great way to kick off the year. Thanks, Camille. We would all be in the restaurant together because I served in a restaurant. And so, we could start a little side hustle here with our past experience. I also find a lot of event folks are from the music space. I know Camille has touched on that.
That's me.
From her experience. And then also, I feel like every podcast guest we have reveals this backstory of music. So, cool stuff, but we like people, I guess. So here we are. So Kate Hammitt, CMO of Splash, so grateful to be here and have this amazing panel with me to tackle challenges for 2023. So I have had 20 years in the event space. My career started in sports. I worked for the U.S. Golf Association doing the U.S. Open, getting Tiger Woods security details set up, getting the liquor license set up, hospitality tents sold, all the way into, B2B events and doing 2,000 field marketing events globally and 10,000 person user conferences. So soup to nuts, also some restaurant marketing in there. So B2B mostly, but some sprinkles of B2C events. And have enjoyed every moment. So it's fun to be able to bring this all together. And the event industry always keeps us on our toes. So I have not stopped learning and excited to learn from everybody here today.
That is the name of the game, right? Kate said this to me, and so I gotta credit her. But if you're not learning as a marketer, then you're going to become a dinosaur, and none of us want to become dinosaurs, right? So glad that we are all here today, and we've got a nice full audience. So, okay, let's dive into our discussion, because as I said earlier, an overwhelming number of folks shared that budget constraints, or cutbacks are a major stressor and challenge these days. And this, it makes sense, to me, given the rising cost of travel and event-related expenses like food and beverage or staffing or even swag. But I feel like this is only part of the picture here. And I think we also need to look at how we are investing our time in addition to budget, right? So that said, panelists, how are you thinking about allocating your most precious resources, time and money? And how does that feed its way into how you kind of decide your marketing mix? Marissa, I'm going to start off with you. I would love to hear about how you are thinking about this very big question. Like, how do you invest your time and budget? How are you thinking about that this year?
Sure. Listen, it's a difficult time for event marketers. We all know that when times are tough and markets are down, that we're typically told to sort of scale back with our events. So what I've, focused on are smaller, more intimate experiences versus larger activations. Typically, these are targeted regional events. Being super creative with our resources. So focusing on the small details to make those more intimate gatherings more memorable and for the attendee, but also more impactful for the company. And then lastly, which I know we're going to get into, partnering with our sales team to track our successes and ROI, which is arguably, the most important part. With everything that we do now, we want to ensure that there's accountability across the board and that sales and marketing are collaborating before, during, and after an event, because if there are limited resources, we really need to ensure that we're spending wisely. So those have been, my priorities.
Absolutely. So just to dig in there, I know you mentioned to me how many events you're running this month. So just connecting the dots, you're thinking more strategically about how you are allocating budget into, as you said, less of the like big flashy, like big budget events and activations, and really funneling that budget, dispersing it more, right, across maybe different regions or markets and events.
Exactly. And, it really started with our end of year planning. We kind of looked at what we were going to be focusing on for 2023. We divided it into markets that were really important to us. And then we selected regions that we wanted to show up in. So that's sort of what's happening in January. We have a lot going on this month, but it's targeted. We're working really closely with our commercial org. So we're making sure that, we are tracking those data and metrics, again, before, during, and after the event, so that we have sort of a data-driven approach to events, which, more so now than ever when resources are limited.
Preach, preach, preach. If anyone is not basing their strategy and these very important decisions in data, I don't know what you're doing. It sounds like you're driving blind. So that's really helpful to hear, Marissa. Thank you. Steph, I would love to hear your perspective. Are you kind of following a similar approach as Marissa? Are you thinking about it differently? How are you allocating your budget and time this year?
Yeah, no, very similar to what Marissa said. I love everything she brought up. I think that the one point I would really hone in on is like, we're just getting very picky with what we do. That alignment piece is huge in the sense that, I'll address the other elephant in the room that oftentimes when budgets are cut, I feel like it's often event marketing. So making sure that you're aligned with leadership at your company is huge. And similar to what Marissa said at the beginning of the year, we honed in on like, okay, here are the true types of people we want to go after. Here's our ideal buyer. These are the people we want to get in front of. These are the companies we want to get in front of. Not ABM, but awareness of what we're trying to achieve and who we're trying to talk to. And then just getting really picky in how we decide to connect with those people. Is our biggest competitor in the, we have one of our products is Marketing OS. And, a couple of competitors are 6 Sense Demand Base. Are they going to be at this event as well? And if so, like, how big are they going? It's like a little bit of a gamble. You got to get a little creepy. You got to do your homework. But it's the best way to really decipher, like, okay, if they're not spending their time and money there, like, I don't think that we should, and maybe we can allocate that budget somewhere else. So getting really picky with that. And then also, if we do those trade shows, the larger trade shows, how can we make the best use of our time there? How can we control the narrative of who's coming to our booth versus not? So rather than just waiting and letting people come to us, we do a lot of list pulls and pre-outreach prior to the event to say, hey, we're going to be here. Would love to set up a meeting with you on site. And we go in with 100 pre-booked meetings or more for each event. And that helps us control the narrative around that data and the metrics we're getting back that we can then report back to sales. Typically makes them quite happy. So I think that's like what I would add on to what Marissa said.
I love that. I actually I just recorded a solo podcast episode on event attendance, but what I talked about in there is kind of this idea of locking it in with your attendees even before the event. How can you get them on the hook to commit to some other type of engagement? Maybe it's a conversation at your booth or at your wraparound event or at your dinner that you're hosting. Maybe it's something else. But I love that like pre-booked meeting strategy, and how you're thinking about getting more out of your events. And like you said, just being like kind of ruthlessly prioritizing where you need to go in order to meet your buyers where they are. So I love that. Kate, what do you think about what Marissa has shared and what Steph has shared so far, and what's your perspective on? We've been talking about this a lot, obviously. Would love for you to share with our audience how we've been thinking about allocating our time and budget, and how that maybe is in line with, or maybe a little different, something else to think about as from what Marissa and Steph had shared so far.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, there's definitely a theme. If everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. So you have to figure out where you're going to focus. I think a really good exercise that we've gone through, and that honestly, I think marketers should try for, a recession helps, but doing kind of a bottoms up budgeting exercise. What do you need to be successful? Looking at the ROI of what drives your pipeline, and then from an approach and making sure that you're doing the most important things, not forgetting your customer, in the mix. How do you partner with your customer during these difficult times, whether you're in customer marketing and your events are geared towards them or not? That leads into your thought leadership, your content. What does it mean to be partnered with your buyer, and thinking about putting on the buyer hat, as we try to do always. But your buyer has an opportunity cost for events as well. I mean, particularly ones that are require travel or several days, meeting elsewhere. That's pulling them out of the business during a tough time. So how can you make that worthwhile? How can you make the opportunity cost make sense for them and kind of justify the effort, and really focus your budget on what you need to drive that ROI, and then layer on the other opportunities that we know as marketers, not just event marketers, but related to that channel diversification, and making sure that you are keeping brand in mind and doing all the things that we need to do for longer term growth, but making sure you're kind of shoring up around ROI in the short term. And then from a people perspective, which we didn't talk about as much, and I'm sure we're going to get into more with the sales conversation, the evergreen, how do we become one team, one dream, which is a favorite conversation of mine, because when it works, it's a really beautiful thing. But there are always in every team pockets of efficiency, pockets of capacity. And in some ways, this type of environment opens up a really interesting opportunity to give team members exposure into other areas of the business, having that clarity around what other teams are doing, or providing a helping hand might open up career development opportunities. So make sure you're linking arms with your team, understanding those different pockets of capacity, and turning that into a potential opportunity for specific team members who might not know what it means to be on the ground in event marketing, but they're going to become a better professional if you give them that opportunity. So that's always a good way to have a win-win.
I love that. I love that you brought up that people perspective, and I think what you were saying in terms of like that diversification is going to be so critical this year. We've been seeing it, it aligns with the data that we've seen, even just around how the buyer journey has changed, and attendee behavior has changed, right? So a lot of adjustment that needs to probably happen in our strategies to meet the moment, and like I said, in response to Steph, meet our buyers where they are. But love what we have shared so far. Okay, so my next question is really digging into, well, first of all, we have some questions in the chat. I just want to acknowledge, if you've asked a question in the chat, I'm keeping an eye on it. And if we're not answering it live, I see Marissa and Steph hopping in there to answer. So thank you. If we don't get to answer it live right now, I promise we will get to it. So hold that thought. I think this is a natural progression into talking about how can we really supercharge that sales and marketing collaboration to increase that ROI that Kate was talking about. Marissa and Steph have also talked about it, right? In different ways, we're all talking about how can we get more ROI out of our events, and making sure you have that alignment between sales and marketing is going to be a key aspect to that. It always has been, and it will continue to be, maybe even more important. So, Steph, I would love to hear, I've got a bunch of kind of sub questions for this big meaty question, right? One of which is, how are you scaling events, without maybe full headcount? And when I say full headcount, I'm thinking maybe that could be on marketing, could be on sales, but like, how are you thinking about, as Kate said, marketing and sales as one team, one dream, and really pulling as much value out of the people on that team to then derive value out of your events? How are you kind of approaching that? What are some of the tactics maybe that have helped you work smarter, helped your sales team work smarter, either before or after the event? I saw some questions in the chat about how do you even get those pre-booked meetings? Would love to hear a little bit more about how you're doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's three main things that come to mind for us as we work with our sales team. The first is, old school, building relationships. It's a little bit harder, post-pandemic and with everything going on. But when you have those opportunities and you're on site at an event with these people, work really hard to gain their trust. Gaining the trust of the sales team is going to help them believe in you and want to support you even further. So it kind of goes without saying, but just building that strong foundation of a relationship. The next would be data. So ensure you're looking at the same data and understanding that you're working towards the same goals. If we're pre-booking those meetings, I'm not just going after random accounts. I'm going after, the 1,000 accounts that have been identified as like really wants and really needs for our business, and making sure we're looking at the same data, and honing in on that. Having that same data source as well, just in general, helps align the two teams. So when it comes to events, it's just an added bonus to have that. And then the last piece is, at the end of the day, their sales team members, they want an incentive. They want whatever they do for an event, in support of it, anything that they touch, to come back to contribute to whatever their quota is, and whatever, at the end of the day, what they need to achieve. So as event marketers, it's really important to say, hey, yes, we're asking you to come work the booth at this event, but here's how it's going to help you reach your meeting quota or your, monetary quota for the month. Here's what you can get out of it. And then show them after what they got out of it, so that they're eager to come back for more. So example, those pre-booked meetings, we identified that the SDRs are the perfect team for that. We give them exactly what they need when they make those dials, and they book a meeting. And if it actually happens, which actually our meeting show rate, I guess you could say, is quite high, because these people are interested. So I would say it's usually 80 to 85% of the meetings we pre-book, these people do show up. So then those SDRs get paid out on those booked meetings. So any way you can work with your sales leadership team to incentivize the team members is huge.
I love that. I have one quick follow-up question, and then I want to hear from Marissa and Kate on how they've approached this. My follow-up question for you, Steph, is the first point that you made is just the importance of building and establishing that trust, right, with your sales team. How do you do that? I'm sure there are many people in the audience who are like, yes, I want to do that, but I don't know the language to use or the approach to take exactly. And I'm just curious if you can give us just a quick 30-second, list of tips or advice, anything really, to just help make this piece of advice really actionable for whoever's listening in and relates to this need of building trust with their sales team in order to get more out of their events. What would you say?
I would say, listen. So a lot of times people just want to be heard. And a lot of people have a lot of feedback and ideas when it comes to event marketing. And they're not all bad. And a lot of them are great. And maybe you can't accommodate them because of budget constraints or because it's not aligned with your strategy. But hearing them out and giving them that chance to share that feedback has been one of the things I think that has just worked in my career in general. And, a good example, we have so many customers. I get a message on Slack at least once a day from one of our account managers, and they're like, hey, this customer wants us to support their SKO. We need to send swag. We need to send a tablecloth. We need to do this, blah, blah, blah. And rather than always being like, no, like we don't have the resources to do that, we set up a really standardized process of intake for those requests. We have a set budget that comes from a separate budget than our events budget for that support. And that's another way. Now they're like, okay, they're really supporting us. It's a small lift at the end of the day, a little tedious, but if you have a standardized process, hearing them out and then supporting them on their customer ask is a great way to build that relationship.
I love that. I think that's really helpful to hear. Listen and, lean into those playbooks that you can build and then reuse. And then they have that structure that they need to show up and do what you're asking them to do. Okay. This is awesome. I'm loving this. And we've got so many, questions in our Q&A. So I'm excited to get to those. But first, I want to hear from Marissa. What do you think about, what are the tactics you've used to work smarter with sales? And are there, maybe do you have any other advice in terms of like getting that buy-in and creating those integrated playbooks between marketing and sales? How have you approached that for your team?
Sure. Yeah. So I think a lot of this is really echoing what Steph said. We take sales along the journey with us. We define our event goals and objectives with our stakeholders. We get their buy-in. We have a kickoff meeting. We make sure that we are all aligned across the board. We like to ensure that we're communicating the value of the event and how this is going to help the business achieve its goals, more specifically how each individual salesperson will benefit based on what they've outlined or their priorities for the year. And we get others involved in the planning process. So, I think as event marketers, or at least I'll speak for myself, I often keep things to myself because I feel like it could be a little daunting sometimes and open Pandora's box by getting the sales team involved with the planning. But I find that when you keep them in the loop and you serve up the right questions and information to them, it makes for an overall more successful event and outcome and a better experience for everyone. But you could be selective about what you share. So just word to the wise. I think, again, it's important to measure and report on that success, use data and analytics to track, key metrics of your event, such as attendance, engagement, lead gen, we leverage Salesforce. We have a Splash Salesforce and Marketo integration set up, and it's been incredibly helpful and does half of the work for me, which is wonderful for our marketing operations team, but also for our sales team to kind of create dashboards and reports that make sense to them and incentivize them. And then continuously improve, right? Like use the data and the feedback that we've gathered to identify key areas for improvement to make changes for future events. Every kickoff meeting that we have, we look at what our feedback was from the year prior, and that's usually a good starting point. So it's helpful.
I love that. And you're saying you're collecting feedback like internally, right? From your
externally and internally, right? So not only is it important to send out that survey to your attendees and say, how'd we do, but also to get it from the sales team or your, whoever your internal stakeholders are. And I think, again, it can be a little bit of a daunting process, but when you realize it's just, to improve and help the business achieve its goals and you kind of change your perspective a bit, it definitely helps.
Yeah, I love that. Love a postmortem. Curious, maybe we can get a quick poll spun up. Does anyone in our audience currently leverage either a postmortem tactic or strategy, or are you surveying your internal teams? Hopefully you're already getting feedback from your attendees. Hopefully I am not the first person to suggest that you do that. But how are you, really curious to hear how our audience is collecting that feedback too. Okay, so Kate, what about you? What do you think of all of this? What would you add in terms of how you can align your event strategy with your business strategy? I'm wondering if maybe you can shed some light also on like, how do you get your leadership, your execs to understand the strategy and what goes into executing it? And same thing would go for sales as well. I think of like getting that sales alignment and also exec alignment as, both very important. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I think, I use the philosophy like one team, one dream. Like you're together as the revenue team, so you should act like it, break down the silos, but not necessarily assume that everybody understands everything about events like you do. Like you have to take the layman's approach, train, use data to unite around your shared purpose, make sure that that aligns with the strategy. One big thing that I always, kind of try to check in as a marketer every time is, are we marketing our marketing? Are we marketing that internally? Do people understand the expectations, the message, who we want in the room, why we would want, this particular ICP in the room, or why we're doing this, and make sure that you're over communicating that, not just leading up to the event in the planning stage, but also, when you're in the promotion stage, so people understand, how you're progressing to goal. And one of the things that's really worked well for me throughout the years is creating that service level agreement with sales up front around events. What are our shared expectations? Let's put them down on paper. Let's align around that. What do you want from me? What do I want from you? And make sure that there is an understanding of who does what. Because I think without that, there's a lot of ambiguity. And then the next phase of that to me is goal setting. And then, in that over communicating throughout the promotion phase, when you've set goals, I know there's some questions around, how do we hold people accountable? I've always found that sales folks and marketing folks to a large extent are very competitive and really enjoy, kind of charging after goals and doing that together as a team. So making sure that you harness the persona that you're working with and their strengths, and making sure that you're sort of mitigating, weaknesses, just given our different roles. Sales is moving quickly, making sure that, you're over communicating, that you're giving them everything that they need to quickly share the value of an event, and then, leave it to them to kind of get that one-to-one approach to do those invites and kind of get that engagement and attendance. And then taking that a step further, I've always found that sales folks are really incredible event hosts when you arm them with the tools that they need, with the training to control a room in person and make people feel empowered to speak, and making a networking event really pop, or giving them a training for a virtual event, so they feel like they have the tools that they need with equipment and technology, and then also able to just give a great performance with that virtual event. So those are some of the things that that I think are really important in terms of leveraging sales to really collaborate you with events, because you can really amplify your message if you are using more people to do so, and creating more opportunities, more experiences. And sales is a great way to do that. And again, double clicking on, the feedback, and also, that the post-event hustle. What does that look like? Again, back to the SLA, the service level agreement. If you don't have one, you got to get one in place, because it's so critical to understand, what do we expect out of, our team? Who is, following up for the questions that are asked in the webinar? Where is there an opportunity for sales to create a connection, or to, just make sure that your thought leadership message came through, get a better understanding of the buyer in a way that isn't intrusive to their journey. So, those are the top of mind things. It's great to give spiffs. It's great to give kickers. That doesn't always work. A lot of times, it is down to those relationships, but what beyond, the goal setting, making it easy, making sure the team understands what matters, testing, scaling that, operationalizing it, and then automating it. It's great at Splash. We have a Slack integration that goes, so we don't spend time telling sales that a target account is joining an event, or a customer has, signed on for, one of our Magic Spark dinners. It's automatically happening. So, try to get to that point where you can automate that time, so you can spend more time in the strategy, in the relationship building, and less time in the event burden, because that just bums everybody out.
Oh my gosh, does it ever? And especially when you are running multiple events per month, maybe even per day, right? Across regions, that just when you layer on the scale, finding those and really tapping into those opportunities for automation, for simplifying your process, for streamlining things, for creating playbooks, right, is going to save you time so that you can reinvest that time. Going back to our first question, right, of how are we investing our time and budget, you can reinvest that time into something else like your strategy. And the great news about the fact that we are here in 2023 is that there are a ton of event tech and MarTech platforms that you can couple together, like Marissa mentioned, the Splash Salesforce Marketo integration, or like Kate mentioned, the Slack integration we have with Splash. Just it literally can save you a significant amount of time. So not to be discounted or brushed off as fluff or a nice to have. I think in today's age, these are very much need to have tools in our back pockets. Kate, we've got some questions about this SLA in the chat. And also other things. We've got an idea here to start, which Kate, we've been talking about this offline anyways, dropping more just easy to use resources in our community. So again, if you haven't joined, join, because we're going to be dropping a quick playbook on what questions you should be asking to get to that SLA, and or what are other, we're going to be putting some fun tactical playbooks together. And you should join so that you get access to those resources. Okay, Kate, you talked about something that sparked this next question for me, which is really about, and I think it's a nice build off from how do we align sales and marketing, right? Well, we want to hit our goals, right? And so we need to align sales and marketing. Amongst our goals is most likely, I'm sure you want to bring in more revenue for your business, but in order to do that, you're going to need to amplify your brand, right? You're going to need to cut through the noise when it comes to, there are so many events happening these days. How do you make your events, your brand stand out from the rest so that your target attendees are actually showing up and engaging with you 365 days a year? So my next question is, thinking through what are you doing that's either the same or different, to get your target attendees to actually show up to your events. And I think there's probably some interesting tactics that you deploy that is leveraging sales maybe. So it's very relevant, I think, to this sales and marketing alignment conversation. But I'm really curious, first, what are you really trying to accomplish with your audience? And how are you starting to rethink getting your target attendees to your events? How are you thinking about how you're going to influence your attendance rates? This is a big question for everyone who registered. I mean, it was, as I said, this was like one of the top 3 things. And so I would like us to spend some time just talking about how to influence attendance rates and get, as I said, your target attendees to actually show up to your events. So Kate, I'll start with you just because you're off mute and ready, I think, to speak. And we've been talking about this a lot. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I think you've got to pull it back a little bit to the event purpose to really think through like the engagement. So content is king. We want to make sure that we're thought leaders. We want to educate and entertain. So that's, an opportunity with events that, we have to place the value in either learning or laughs, essentially, and then there's and thinking through what story we want to tell from a thought leadership perspective and anchor the purpose there. And then there's the other component that I think of is the purpose engagement. So again, with our Magic Spark, dinner series, I'm shameless plugging that twice so far, but it does kind of illustrate that dinner series. The purpose is to bring together the community. The purpose is for networking. It is not for splash to be sharing how we see the world, but of course, facilitating that community. So, that engagement can be community-based, networking-based, or buyer-seller-based. And so, I usually start there in terms of anchoring in the purpose, and then saying, okay, for attendees, like what modality works best for that? Obviously, it's harder to network virtually than it is in person, but kind of creating the event format around that, and then thinking through the story that you're trying to tell. If it is educate and entertain, what are you trying to share that is relevant to your area of expertise? For us, it's really nice because we're event marketers marketing to marketers, so it's a win-win for us to have these conversations. But anchoring there, and then how does the event format and the value that you're going to bring make it sticky? And we've had a lot of clients candidly say that they don't do events that they wouldn't go to themselves. And I think that's oftentimes a pretty good way of starting. Of course, it's an N of one, but at the same time, if you don't want to go to your event, it's going to be really hard to get your ICP there, who you presumably, deeply understand. So, starting with those things kind of, and building the strategy from there. And then we could probably talk until, this time next year around, tactics to increase your attendance.
We definitely could. That's a really helpful overview, I think, Kate. And I think just really good reminders, right? Focus on the stories that you're going to be telling, and what is really going to drive value for your attendees. And yes, I agree. If you wouldn't attend your own event, why are you hosting it? Mm-hmm. Even if you are technically not your own target attendee, you have to put yourself in their shoes and ask yourself, if you were them, if you did have their needs, if you did have their goals, would attending this event help you fulfill a need or help you get closer to hitting a goal? Mm-hmm. So I love that. Steph, what do you think? How are you kind of tackling this big, hairy challenge of improving event attendance or just amplifying your brand and getting the right target attendees to engage with your brand through events?
Yeah. So when it comes to amplifying our brand, we are essentially an extension of our integrated marketing team. So for us, that means they are the ones that create the messaging and create the campaigns per quarter. And we take that messaging and extend it out to our events. So it's the notion of, if you keep changing your messaging, it's not going to stick. I think Kate has used the word sticky. You got to make it sticky. So the more integrated and collaborative we can be with our other teams and the other messaging that's going out there at our events, the better. From an attendance standpoint, I think we've noticed pre-COVID, I used to expect like a 20% drop rate off of attendees. Now it's more 50. So setting the expectations of, if you're doing, a dinner or CXO event, setting the expectations of over doing it on the registration list and ensuring you get the actual amount of people you want there. To do that, again, I wholeheartedly agree with what Kate said about, it's really about the purpose of the event. So like a few examples we do these CXO roundtables that we started in Q4, where we bring in 15 to 20 C-level executives. It's a thought leadership discussion. We bring in someone from Bain or someone from Forrester and a customer. And the goal of that is not to sell Zoom info. It is strictly to provide a safe space for our colleagues to come together and have an open and honest discussion about what they need at that time. Outside of that, like, the discussion is great. It brings a lot of people in, but then we do it at these very exclusive clubs like Soho House, or for anyone in Boston, the Quinn House. Clubs that you have to have a membership to get into, places that they wouldn't necessarily be able to go on any given day. But because they're coming with us, they're able to check it out. So making it like more of an experience. And then another good example is just getting really creative. At Dreamforce this past year, we wanted to create a VIP lounge for our customers and passersby of the event to kind of stop in, have a place to work, charge their phone, get a snack, grab a coffee that was off of the show floor. We didn't even have a booth at Dreamforce. We had over 200 pre-booked meetings. So those were happening in the lounge as well. So that's like a twofer, right? So we had the meetings, but then we also provided, again, a safe space and more thought leadership, like connecting community type of event there. And to make that one memorable, we actually ended up taking over an abandoned sneaker store and turning it into this Zoom info lounge. And it just went really well. It was like very visible. People were coming in, hanging out. It was really cool. You just have to get like really creative. Do something that, like, if you were walking down the street and you were like, what is that? Why are there Nike signs on the wall? But it's Zoom info branded and, you know, that kind of thing. So just getting really, really creative.
That is so cool. Love that example. I love everything that you said, Steph. Definitely that you need, you know, attrition is a wild beast these days. So, you know, beefing up your registration or your signups, your RSVPs can go a long way. And I love that. Yeah, I agree with Marissa. I love that outside of the box thinking. And also, I dropped this in the chat, but I also love a wraparound or kind of satellite experience or event sans booth, because that is definitely a way to help your budget stretch, have presence at a larger conference or trade show where a number of your buyers or ICP might be, without having to necessarily pay an arm and a leg for a booth and all that goes along with that. So I love those examples. Marissa, what about you? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with Kate and Steph and what everyone's kind of saying in the chat. I think that outside of the box sort of creative thinking matters so much these days. I know that we're, you know, still in a pandemic, but I mean, in this new sort of environment, people are super selective with their time, and it's hard to gain that impact and engagement that we used to. So, you know, definitely don't want to throw any more run-of-the-mill sort of happy hours that everybody else is doing. We're doing a lot more events with thought leadership. That's been our approach, and it's a way for us to kind of get more bang for our buck. You know, gone are the days that we host something and it kind of lives and dies there on site. The way that we approach, you know, most of our events now is through the lens of how can we get the most out of it and get more miles out of our investment. So what content can we leverage from our time here? What content can we repurpose that we make on site here? CES is a good example. We did this sort of tangential showing up without showing up. We didn't have a booth or a space on the floor, but we had a meeting space and drove people there. We had some really cool VR experiences and demos that we were showing people. We wanted it to be a place where they can kind of hang out and feel comfortable, put their feet up on a coffee table and just like chill out versus have it be such a formal experience. And in addition, we produced some awesome content there that we're now and gained insights around, you know, tech and innovation that we're going to be able to use for the first half of the year. So it was great for our investment, awesome, you know, for client engagement. And yeah, we kind of created a little bit more of an impact for ourselves. But again, always working with sales to ensure that accountability. I know we keep going back to that. So it's all kind of connected.
Absolutely. It is all connected. And, you know, I love that you brought up the idea of, you know, using your events and repurposing content from your events. We've talked a lot about that in different virtual roundtables and webinars. It is a really efficient way to do more with less, I will say.
Totally.
So definitely encourage that. And I think it also speaks to all the different types of goals you might think through for your events or your event programs, right? So you might have your more like obvious goals, build pipeline, generate revenue. Maybe you want to, you know, generate ops, or you're trying to get net new leads. But what are the other maybe like secondary goals that you can set that would fuel the rest of your, you know, marketing and sales teams kind of driving towards bigger objectives, right? Like maybe you need to lean in more and marry your event strategy with your content strategy. So I really think like I would really, really encourage event marketers to think beyond the scope of just events and what you are owning, and think about how not only can you partner more closely with sales, but how can you partner more closely with your other marketing leaders on your team? Who's running your organic social? Can they help you, weave in their expertise into your event strategy? Or as I said, your content marketer, maybe. Lots of different ways to think through that. Okay, we've got 5 minutes left, and I've got one final question. I just want to acknowledge we have 16 questions submitted in the Q&A, which is amazing. So what I'm going to commit to is, since we might not have time to address all of them, and we have this community that we can leverage beyond this event to stay in touch and to keep learning together, I'm going to take these questions, I'm going to put them into a Google Doc, and I will work behind the scenes with Marissa and Kate and Steph to answer these questions. We'll share the responses in our community. So again, if you want the answers to these questions, if you want their perspectives on this, join the community. We will share after this event more answers and resources for you to navigate these challenges. So my final question for the panelists today is, a little bit more of a high level question. Let's just be real. These are some challenging times, and I'm sure that there are a number of people in the audience who are just feeling that. They're feeling the weight of it. So what's some advice that you would have for event marketers looking to, as I keep saying, do more with less, like take action on the idea of do more with less this year? Is there just any like parting advice that you have, any final pearls of wisdom or reminders that you want to implant in people's minds to help them go off and be successful in their events this year? Let's see. Kate, I'm going to put you on the spot first. What's your like final parting advice for folks?
My parting advice is something that I'm thinking about quite a bit, and I'll speak fast so my partners here have a chance to go. But I'm thinking deeply about a cohesive buyer's journey and how events, are really the bedrock of that. If it takes, according to Forrester Gartner, pick your research, but 27 touch points for to take someone through pipeline. So much of that is events, experiences. What are those impactful touch points? I'm thinking about that and how we can do that in, an efficient, scaled way that really helps our buyer, through these tough times, and then also to better understand, splash in the process. But that's something that's really top of mind as we look to a cookieless future in 2024, as we think about how, the buying journey has changed in general and is so independent. These are things that we just can't ignore, and events are so critical for this evolution. And so, once again, event marketers being the tip of the spear for all these business challenges, but, we wear it well. And, this is a great opportunity for us to really, redefine how events are impacting, the pipeline and their importance in the marketing mix.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Thank you. Steph, what would you say? What's your parting advice for our audience members?
I'll give like a very quick tactical next steps. Define and lock down that collaborative strategy with sales. Identify each of your event types and the specific goals and metrics around those events, and then get creative. Maybe you want to be at Dreamforce, but you don't want to have the booth like we did. Get creative, have a presence, do it in a way that is going to catch people's attention. And that's a great way to save money. So those are my 3 big ones.
Love them. Thanks, Steph. Marissa, last but not least, what's your final advice?
Mine would be to support each other. I think, as I mentioned, I lean on the Splash community for so much, for many years, but most recently, at the start of COVID, we were all in a bit of a chaotic sort of spiral. I didn't know what to do. I turned to the Splash community to kind of get answers and advice. And there are templates and strategy and process that I learned during those times that I am applying and still use every day. So I couldn't encourage, and it's really, Splash isn't paying me to say this. I've been a customer for a long time by choice. Every company that I've gone to, I've got it stood up, and I've joined the community and encouraged other marketers that I work with to do so. It's been an incredible resource, and I'm excited to, again, answer the questions in the chat, to share some templates with each other. It's been great for me. So excited if even one person joins because of this conversation. So
thank you so much, Marissa. And it's true, we really did not pay her to say any of those things. I am really too. I'm really hopeful that we can really come together and, as Marissa said, really show up for each other, support each other, because we can be more successful together. So thank you so much, Marissa and Kate and Steph. This has been such a fun conversation and very illuminating for me. So I hope everyone tuned in also got some gems out of this. We are at time. I want to say we have a feedback survey we just dropped in the chat, and final secret raffle. If you fill out that survey in the next hour, you too will be entered in to win a special event strategy session with our team. So fill it out. Please give us the feedback, because we create these experiences to help you be more successful in your role. So it's really helpful to hear what's working or what's not working. And if you enjoyed today's discussion, not only do we release new episodes of our Checked In podcast pretty much weekly, we'll drop the link for that in the chat. We also want to just say, save the date for February 16th for our next discussion, which will be all around how to fuel buyer engagement through your events year round. You will get an email invite for that next week. So be on the lookout for that. That is it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for rocking with me. And until next time, take care.
Thank you.
thanks all.